Great. All right, welcome to the November committee meeting of the Zoning, Planning, and Parks for ANC 1A. This committee meeting is a little different in that we are sort of traversing terms. So we will not be able to vote on any of the cases that we're hearing this evening until at least January in the new ANC term. And so I have also invited I've invited all of the commissioner-elects that will be with us in January, and two of them have joined us. So I want to welcome Mr. Wood and Mr. Lehman. I hope I'm saying that right with Lehman. I haven't met him personally yet. So just so you know, so for those of you that are new to the process, we'll have the applicants go through their plans and let us know what they're planning to do and what kind of relief they are requesting in the zoning, and then we'll have an opportunity as a committee to make recommendations or suggestions. But we'll also hear from the community about what their issues and concerns are. Sometimes we move to then give a recommendation as to whether or not we support things or don't support things. I have a suspicion that tonight is going to be more of a here's what we think and what can you do to resolve any of these issues, or we'll have some other future steps, and then we'll go from there. So does anyone have any questions before we begin? Very good. And I will try to keep an eye on the thing. So and Commissioner Wade did ask who was on. So again, it's Mr. Wood and myself. We have the architect. Can you introduce yourself, Kay? Sorry.
Hi, I'm Kay Akinsinde. I'm architect with Two Plies, and we are the architect of record for this project.
Thank you. We have committee member Stan, is it Vogger? Am I saying that right? Vogger?
Voiger, I usually
Voiger. Oh, sorry.
I like Vogger too.
Commissioner Bass, the two zoning attorneys are Mr. Sullivan and Ms. Wilson. I mentioned already Mr. Lehman, and I'm not going to try Mr. Sortwell, Michael Sortwell, and you're also with the applicant?
No, sorry, I'm not. I'm a resident of the neighborhood.
Oh, okay. I might have accidentally. You know what? I think the names moved around on me. I'm going to demote you, and then I'm going to bring up Matt, who is.
I was wondering why I was the only one who got in here.
Anyway, we'll talk. We'll chat with you later. Hold on, I gotta look for my. Well, we'll figure that out later. Hold on. Promote to panelist. So I meant to do Matt, and the names just shifted while I was doing it. Matt, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure, Matt Scorzafava with ERB Properties.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry, I'm having real trouble here with Michael. Well, we'll just leave Michael where he is. Okay, Kay, you have the ability to share your screen if you want to go ahead and do that and let us see the project and walk us through it. And you're on mute right now.
Sorry, still new to this Zoom thing. But if at any time you guys can't hear me or you need me to myself, stop me and let me know, and we'll get right into it. And please let me know if you can see my screen once I share it. So can everybody see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, now it's up. Thank you.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so this is for 426 Manor Place Northwest. This is a 3-unit renovation and project. Some exterior renderings. So there's an existing row house that is being converted. Existing single-family row house is being converted into a 3-unit condo building with a third floor addition and also a rear addition at the back. And this lot is located in RF1 zone. The existing site plan. So we have the outline of the existing building and also the proposed site plan showing the extent of the addition in the back and other site improvements that we have recommended for this project. So just to walk you guys through the plans, the existing row house remains pretty much intact from the front facade perspective. We are showing 1 unit, 2 bedroom, 2 baths in the cellar with separate entrance from the front and also at grade egress at the rear as well. On the second floor, we're showing the second unit, which is 3 bedroom, 2 baths with a partial square footage on the second floor as well. So there are 2 bedrooms on the lower level and then an ensuite main bedroom on the second floor. And for the third unit, it occupies the second floor and the new third floor. And that is a, excuse me, 3 bedroom, 3 bath unit with a access to a roof deck, which you see on the last plan. And the roof deck has been pulled back from the front facade to mitigate visibility from the street and also to help with, I guess, noise and activity from the roof filtering down to the street level. Some enlarged plans showing the units. And, we have some 3D views of the roof access, and you can see where the railing has been set back from the roof, from the edge of the roof line at the front. Some facades. These are still in development, obviously, but as I alluded to earlier, the main facade is remaining intact along with the mansard roof. We are stepping back from that existing mansard roof at the third floor, zoning requirements. And the rest of the building is basically just our hardy panel all the way around. Some sections through the building. So at section 3, you can see where we are maintaining the existing mansard roof at the front, and we're stepping the third floor back from the existing roof. It's going to be a total of about 7 feet, give or take. So that, I believe, concludes the architectural presentation. I will turn it over to Marty or whoever's on with us from the zoning attorneys, so they can walk us through the special exceptions that we are requesting for this project and what we've done in order to, I guess, mitigate that. So Marty.
It's Alex Wilson. I'm gonna go ahead and present our relief. So in order to do the project, we need special exception relief from the Board of Zoning Adjustment. For the conversion to 3 units, the regulations actually be changed and are now effective. There used to be a whole host of requirements, but now there are just a few. So for the conversion, we really need to meet 2 requirements. There needs to be an existing building on the property, which there is, and we have to have 900 square feet of land area per unit, which we have. I believe we have 2,750 square feet of land area. So we are also requesting parking relief for 1 parking space as it is physically impossible to provide any parking on the lot. There's no alley at the rear, and we can't get parking through the front or the side. And the board can grant this special exception because of the physical constraints of the property. And we are proposing a similar project on 428 Manor with a matching addition, and that's actually why we originally postponed our hearing. We adjusted these plans for 426 as well. And the rear walls of the building will be in line when the project is complete, but DCRA applies the 10-foot rule to the existing rear wall at 428 Manor, not the proposed project. So even though the building at 428 will eventually meet that rear wall of 426, we still technically need to ask for relief from the 10-foot rule. That's the summary of the relief, but please let me know if you have any questions.
A quick one, and again, they are two separate cases that will have to be voted on separately,
Mhm.
but the point I want on the 10-foot relief, what's the difference between the rear of 426 versus 424, which is not, is a neighbor's property? Do they line up, or how do they?
So I'd have to double check the 428 plans. I believe on the first floor, it doesn't go 10 feet past, but that rear addition, I think, is only 1 story. So
I
we
think it
might have
matches
to,
up with it, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
Alex, I can speak to that.
Okay.
This is Matt from ERP Properties. So there is no 424 Manor. It actually connects to the lots you see at the bottom of the page. That
Oh,
front,
that's the
that
drive.
front on Park.
I meant the other way. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the other way is 430, and the both 426 and 428 are going to match the rear wall of 430 Manor.
Okay, so it'll be one straight line across the back. Thank you. Is there, back to the architect, is there any significant differences between 428 and 426?
No, there isn't. They're pretty much going to be mirrored or flipped. I
Flipped.
suppose.
It's a flip of the other property. Okay. Is that your presentation then?
Well,
That concludes our architectural presentation, unless you guys have any questions regarding the plans which were presented.
Well, we'll start with Commissioner Bass, since this is in his SMD.
Sure. My questions really, I only really have 2. I know it was kind of, I thought the reference to parking relief was rather dismissive in that the statement that the rear of the property is landlocked seemed to suggest that then this should obviously be granted. I'm actually quite the opposite on that. The fact that this block doesn't have an alley and that every house on this row is landlocked is actually kind of a big deal for me, because it means that every single house on that side of the street, presuming that sooner or later what's being proposed could happen to all of them, that's a tremendous amount of relief for an entire block to need. And so I don't think that should be considered lightly, and I have difficulty getting there. I've tried to look for solutions in other properties, and there are times when we've supported as a commission that we would prefer to grant the parking relief versus some of the alternatives. But this one, with no alley at all, and I'll say it's not just the parking, it's also the amount of trash. And I'm coming from the perspective of my property doesn't have access to the alley, so our trash has to be collected in front of the house. I know everyone else on my block is supposed to have alley access trash collection, but the house that abuts me, which was built as a single family home, but currently is a 4-floor, I'll say, apartment house. They've decided that it's easier for them to put their trash in front of their house too. And they generate a lot of trash, and it sits on their front porch, and it has attracted rats, and I don't appreciate rats on my porch. So considering that the proposal, I know we're talking about one property, but it's really 2. And it's a single family home going to 3 units here and 3 units next door, as is the proposal. That's a lot of trash. And so I didn't hear anything address quality of life, impact on parking on the street. There's a potential here that in each of these instances, if the conversion to 3 units were allowed, that we would triple the demand in each case. So those are concerns I need addressed.
If I can address the parking question, Kent. I don't think the difference between, well, sometimes one, depending on what you put in that one single family dwelling and how many bedrooms you put in there, 2 and 3 makes a big difference on the parking demand. If you put 2 large units, because the shell itself, I think we're in the 40% lot occupancy range. So we're not really, we're not taking the density to the limit, but it's a matter of right structure in a sense. And if there were just 2 units in there, there would be potentially more bedrooms, and those bedrooms are potentially more conducive to being rented to adults as opposed to a family. So I think it's hard to predict, whether or not there's a big difference between 2 and 3 units with the parking. I understand what you're saying about if the whole block went that way. Of course, it's a special exception. It's not a variance. So we don't need the unique condition. That's just for the BZA part of it, not the impact part of it.
And I appreciate that, Marty, but I also know that it's like, well, if the whole block went that way, but I also know that 3 years from now, if these 2 were approved, then they would be used as justification for, well, it's already happened, therefore it's precedent.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so that becomes the issue.
Well, sometimes it's like that, and other times it's, hey, there's too many of them already. I mean, I've seen that go both ways.
Yeah.
Well, Marty,
like I said, I really struggle with this block not having an alley, and
Mhm.
I will say this. This is why, and I know people feel, hey, I have strong feelings about zoning in general, but this is one of those blocks where I talk about what a city would look like if developers designed everything and the city had no regulations at all, because that's exactly why we have the block we have. Is it was done before zoning existed, and it was done before the L'Enfant plan went north of Florida. So this is what happens when you let developers maximize profit when they're developing. It's just like 130-year-old example. So
I heard.
That's how you get housing units. Yeah.
let's go to Commissioner Wade, because I heard her try to come in.
yes, I do also have the same concerns that Chairman Bates has. Each time we do an exception, it then becomes a part of the rule. We work very hard to try to protect our residents as best we can. We're already losing parking spaces to other traffic modes. And I think it's irresponsible for developers to build knowing that they're going to need an exception and expecting one. And I'm not in the expecting business. And I don't support giving any more of these special releases when it comes to parking. So I want to be crystal clear that each time I get one of these requests, it really bothers me. Because just because you want it, and just because it's profitable for you to have it, doesn't mean that once you make your money and you leave our neighborhood and the havoc that has been wreaked as a result of it, when people are fighting right now for parking spaces that are being taken up by bike and other express modes of transportation, I think that as a commission, we need to look more strongly at our whole position on parking variances, parking exceptions, parking remediation efforts. I mean, we just really need, on this committee, to look at it because it impacts almost every request we get. I mean, very few builders are building to their right. And I heard you say you were building to your right, but actually you're not building to your right if you're going to require any type of variance. You are asking for exception.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. Let me then ask, since I think it bears the question, if not the 3 units in these 2 locations, do you guys have a plan B? Like, what would this particular, what would the neighborhood expect if you didn't get the variance, or sorry, the special exception that you're asking for?
Yeah, I don't know if Marty wants to answer that, but so just a couple quick comments about me. I've actually don't come into the neighborhoods and then leave shortly after. I've went to Catholic University right around the corner and have been developing in the city since 2004 and have built exclusively for sale condominium units since 2004. We don't build rentals. But I think that the alternative for this site would probably maybe have to go to some type of rental co-living situation. So
I know that's a hypothetical. I'm just trying to, because what I need the neighbors who are going to eventually be speaking and our future committee members to consider is that it's the difference between this, because it's not the difference between it's going to stay a single family home or it's not going to get renovated. It's the difference that it's going to be probably 2 units versus 3. And so I just want to make sure it's clear to our attendees of what we're talking about.
I mean, a couple other comments just about the buildings themselves. I mean, Kay did a great job, but I also just wanted to add a few things. So both of these buildings already have these steps on the side of the porch that's still existing, and then I guess the porch without the roof that's not there anymore. So from the front of the building, what we're trying to do is trying to create that as an entry for 1 unit, and then have the 2 other units be entered from the front door, so that from the front of the building, it still maintained the structure that was there. On another case that we talked about earlier in the year, I believe with your ANC, it was important that some of the architectural elements that were taken away were to be restored. So one of the things Kay and Adam from Two Plies and I talked about is on 428 Manor, we would like to restore the porch to match what was there existing. A couple other things we did before we started hearing some comments back from the community is we decided to step back the 3rd floor away from the front as much as possible and still maintain the plan. I think we could look at that a little bit more. The other thing that we did is we significantly stepped back the roof deck. I know nobody uses the roof deck, but our real estate agents always tell us we have to put them in. And then the other thing we did is we tried to do a setback from the side of the property, both from what you can see in the rear. We may need to make that a little bit larger to meet the regulations, or we may need to seek relief for that. But what we're trying to do is trying to create a break in the building so that when people are looking out the rear of their properties that front on Park, that it's not just one long continuous wall. And we haven't gotten to the stage yet where we're going to pick materials for that side. So I think that's something that we can discuss, since that's something that might be visible. And we're trying to do the same thing at 428 as well. The item that I don't have a solution for is the parking item though, because I would love to have parking there. I'd love to have as many parking spaces as possible, but I don't have a way to put them in.
Before we move to the community, any other committee members? Stan, Mr. Wood, Mr. Lehman?
Just so I'm clear here, sorry, I'm the new guy. So what the ask here is for parking passes or for a parking space, or what's?
So
Absolutely.
to help explain, and again, our newer members have not had the fortune of some of the training that they will get eventually. So the relief that is being requested right now is, instead of being allowed to build 2 units, the relief would allow them to build 3 units. And then the other major relief is, rather than having to have 1 parking space, the BZA would grant them the relief to have 0 parking spaces. So it's not a matter of like the where's, it's a matter of waving it away, saying it's okay, you can go ahead and do that with their say so. The standard for that relief, Marty, could you just remind folks what the standard for relief is for the 3 units and for the parking space? Like what will the BZA look at?
Yeah, and Alex, feel free to jump in because Alex was more prepared for this. But so we can only do the 3 units when you have a lot that's at least 2,700 square feet or more in land area. So it's only for the larger lots. And the criteria, as Alex mentioned, have just been changed because there was a lot of redundant items in there that we're still subject to. Like, for instance, the 10-foot rule that we're asking for relief from, that used to be part of the special exception. It used to be one of the criteria and you would get it waived. But it was also a separate requirement for a matter of right for a 2-unit building. And so we still need that relief separate. It's separate from the special exception. It's also a special exception. So there's the conversion itself that requires relief. The standards for approval for the conditions that the BZA considers now are only 2 conditions. It's an existing residential building, and you have 900 square feet for each unit. So it's a really simple. And then the 10-foot rule. The criteria for that is the standard light and air privacy test, so that the granting relief doesn't substantially adversely affect neighboring properties. In particular, it doesn't unduly impact neighbors' light and air or privacy. And as to the 10-foot rule, that goes to the impact on 428, which of course is the same owner and which is going to be built out to that same line. But technically we need it because as of today, that rear wall is, we're going beyond the existing rear wall of the 428 building. Regarding the court.
Can I?
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, can I get a little bit of clarification? I thought I'd heard earlier that the owner owns both properties, but he's only building out one right now.
No, I think he's going to build out both and maybe even at the same time. But because we're asking for the relief now, and when we file a building permit application, because 428 the existing rear wall will be where it is now, we have to have that relief. Like you can't, it's based on what the existing wall is, not what you're planning to do.
Right, so in actuality, you will be asking for 2 parking relief.
Correct.
2 parking space relief.
That's correct, yes.
So that impacts very strongly on the first ask, because the second ask is definitely right behind it. And we're right back into the situation of now, instead of granting relief for one space, we're in actuality going to be asked to grant relief for 2 spaces. And it's very important and clear to our new commissioners the impact that will have on the existing shortage of parking in the neighborhood. And the rationale was, well, you usually sell condos, but if you can't get to relief, then you'll just have to do rentals. Well, we aren't afraid of rentals. In fact, we encourage rentals because so much rental property has been lost to our community through development of condos. So that's not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned. It's a positive thing. I don't know what the purpose of that statement was. I could care less
I think
what the profit level is. I care more.
I think he was specifically asked what the backup plan was.
Yeah, I mean, it was my
right, but I care.
Yeah,
I care more about the neighborhood in general that I do about the conversion, the type, whether it's the condo or rental.
And I think
want that clear.
the comment was, and it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be a threat or anything, of course, because it's just the reality, and a lot of developers are doing this. And Matt, he can talk about this. That's not his model. He doesn't typically do that. But I do have a lot of clients and some in this ANC, of course, who do the 6-unit or the 6-bedroom units when they can't get the extra unit, and those they're managed by a company, and it's permitted because a family or a household is considered to be up to 6 unrelated individuals, and then you sometimes end up with just that 6 unrelated individuals, and you could have 12 adults living in here instead of 3 families. So that's what we're thinking. I don't think the difference between 1, 2, and 3 regarding the impact on parking I think is either negligible or it's arguably better with 3 units, as odd as that sounds, because you have the same amount of space in the interior, but you end up maybe with even fewer bedrooms than you would in a 2-unit
I'm not
scenario.
buying that. I'm not buying that rationale at all. I'm not buying it at all. So we can just go ahead to the
Okay.
next issue.
Okay, no, I'm going to go back to Mr. Wood again, because it was his question that we were going off of.
Yeah.
Mr.
Do you want me to mention the court?
Did you have
Michael?
any other? No, you can. I don't. The technicalities of the court, I don't think are going to be the big deal.
Okay.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Wood?
No, that's all. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lehman, am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah. It doesn't happen very often on the first try, but you did get it you did get it right.
Okay, great.
My only comment, again, I'm new to this process, and I think I might be kind of echoing what Commissioner Wood was getting at earlier. So it sounds to me like the crux of the issue and the discussion we're having here right now is the fact that these proposals don't offer any parking, right? So, and I feel I apologize in advance. We went over this earlier, but if that's the problem, that we already established whether or not there's a tangible or not tangible, there's a practical alternative to going forward with this proposal, but also including parking. Did we already establish that?
Well, so as far as I understand, the alternative is that it would become 2 rental units, right? There would still be no parking on the lot. Yeah.
Correct. There will be no parking, mostly because the lot is completely landlocked. So there's no way to get to the back area. So they can't add the parking. So the only way to remedy it is to go from 3 units to 2 units, because at 2 units, you are not required to have any parking.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And for some background, typically what happens to meet the parking requirement, and the parking requirement is for off-street parking. So the property itself, in this case, is large enough to accommodate an off-street parking space in the rear, but it's landlocked and there's just absolutely no access to it. And this block in that regards is an anomaly. Even the block to the south has an alley. I will admit it's a painfully narrow alley that's difficult to get a car through, but it does have an alley. This one does not.
And just to tack on to my question from earlier, so then what you were saying earlier, Commissioner Bass, is that because of the fact that it's landlocked, it's not really, even if there were parking in this proposal, if you move it down to 2 units instead of 3 to include that parking, or the other way around. So what you're saying is that the parking space is just it's not practical enough to be actually useful. And I think what you were alluding to earlier was that because of that fact, I would assume the trash pickup would not be able to get through there, and that's why you were saying earlier that the presumptuous residents of that property would have to, put their trash out front instead of in that alley, correct?
Yeah, everything would have to be in the front. The only way for this property to comply with the parking requirement is if a helicopter dropped a vehicle into the backyard and pulled it back out. That's the only way. Well, okay, that's a little over the top. I will say the other way to do it is on some of these properties, some of the houses to the south are, in fact, all the houses to the south are duplexes, even though they're in a row house zone. So a few of those properties do have private shared driveways, but you would still have to be trespassing on someone else's property to get to the rear of yours, if and when such an occurrence was possible. They all don't have them. And then even when they do, the rear yards don't necessarily align as far as grade to make it work. But that's not a solution either. So yeah, these are all landlocked. There's absolutely no way to get, in fact, maybe the in-house, I would say maybe 428 would have enough of it might have a walkway on the side, but that might be public space. I'd have to look at it again. That would be 426. 428, the only way to get to the rear yard of that house is to go through the house.
Okay, is it all right if we move to community members?
Oh yeah.
There are a number of.
I don't have to talk forever. You can hush me.
There was a couple questions. Do you want me to answer those real quick?
Question on that.
You're getting them from the chat, or you're getting from?
So
the...
there-
I got them from the chat, yes.
Oh, go ahead.
I believe okay, so one of the questions was about trash. So knowing that the property was landlocked, what we decided to do is we've designed a trash area underneath the front porch. Instead of going down the existing stairs that are there and then going under the porch, so that the person in unit number 1 would have to pass the trash area every time they walked in and out of their house, we proposed a few steps on the right side of the porch, which would go down to a trash area. And then the plan was to put some landscaping in front of it so you couldn't see it from the street. And then the other question was, why 2 BZA cases and not together? We actually purchased one of the properties. Both of these properties were listed on the multiple listing service. And I believe they were both on there for at least a few weeks. One of them might have been on there for a month or two. And we submitted offers and was accepted on 426. And we started the BZA process then, which was a number of months ago. And then 428 became available. And again, we submitted an offer, but didn't get a response back for probably 30 to 45 days. And then we ultimately were able to purchase that property, which then put a pause on 426 for a few months because we wanted to mirror the plans and see how we could get them to work together.
All right, I've elevated Daniel Nassau. Some people may remember that name because Daniel was on the committee for a little while last year. So Daniel, are you there? Can you unmute yourself? I know you had some comments. And then I'm going to go to Adam Crane next. I see he has his hand raised.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
So thanks for taking some time for my comment. So I'm on the block. I'm 434 Manor Place. I've been an ANC 1A resident since 2007 and on Manor Place since 2015. And I was very friendly with the Savoy family in 428, and I'm really going to miss them. But separate to that, this isn't a by right development, and these, Mr. Scortzafava is not entitled to this exception. And, with Commissioner Wade, I am not afraid of rentals either, or co-living. And this is not like the other exception cases that come before you guys, because they're not just checking the boxes. This, the zoning code specifically contemplates this parking issue and places what I think is an insurmountable hurdle in front of these guys. The major element, as we've discussed, is the property is landlocked. If this were the only property around that with no alley or driveway, the waiver of the parking requirement might make sense. But there's 26 other properties on the same square, and we all share the street parking. So, I myself was all about the bike in the metro, and I still am when there's no global pandemic. But then I had a kid, and now it's not possible to take a kid to the doctor on a bicycle, or at least not when he's 14 months old. And, you know, it's already getting harder and harder and harder to find parking from the condo conversions. And, you know, I've heard tell that the BZA doesn't put much weight into the street parking issue, but in this case, it's specifically mentioned in the code as a requirement. Next, you know, as to the trash, you know, I don't know if you guys ever take a walk down Manor Place twice a week, but the trash and recycling bins make the street really almost impassable on the sidewalk, especially after the trucks come through. So you want to add 4 more, wait, no, right now it's 4 bins and you would go up to 6, if I'm doing my math right. So that's 4 more bins on the street. That's a lot more trash, adding to the litter, adding to the rat problem. And that's a big deal. And, you know, try wheeling your stroller down Manor Place and weaving in and out of trash bins twice a week. You know, the community is near unanimous in opposition to this. You know, I sent to Michael and Commissioner Bass earlier a petition that we circulated. We have 12, yeah, my neighbor Vic has done the math. That's 12 more bins. So that's, we have a petition signed by 30 individuals representing just about all of Manor Place. You know, we've talked about this on the block. Everybody thinks this is just a dreadful idea for us. You know, so I'm gonna ask you guys, the commissioners, you know, side with your neighbors, your friends, your commissioners, and, you know, not with, you know, a Maryland developer who went to Catholic University, but is not going to spend the night on the block. He's never going to have to come home late from the grocery store, drive around the block for 10 minutes with a crying toddler looking for parking, or push a stroller past the garbage bins. And that's it from me. And I hope you know, give us a fair hearing and side with us.
And Daniel, but I just want to confirm what I heard you say, which was the 2 units with, you know, with additional bedrooms would not be, you're okay with that?
I'm okay with it. My next door neighbors are rental. They're lovely young ladies. They're scientists.
Very good. No, I just want to make sure.
And across the street, there's at least 2 rental houses. Yeah, totally.
Totally fine. Okay.
And then,
Adam, you had your hand raised and I've promoted you as well.
Oh, sorry. I'm on a upcoming project, so I'll set this one out.
Oh, okay. No problem. I haven't yet figured out how to get people back out after I've done it. We'll figure that out. I'm going to go to Lucy next. Lucy, I'm just going to allow you to talk. I hope I'm doing that right.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, my name is Lucy. I'm speaking for myself and my husband, Alex. We live at 430 Manor Place, so we're right next door to these 2 proposed developments. And I just want to chime in and echo what Daniel and the commissioners, Bays, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and commissioners, and especially Commissioner Wade, echo the points that they brought up. You know, parking we moved into this to 430 Manor about 2 years ago now. And already parking has become quite tight as more folks have and more development has happened in on our street and the surrounding street. And so we're just very concerned, especially about the parking exceptions issue, because as others have pointed out, this isn't just an additional parking space for 426, it's also an additional parking space for 428. And we're just, you know, very concerned not having that alleyway with how parking is going to move forward on the street. And, you know, there are other developments around the corner on Park as well that are being developed. And so, you know, I think the parking situation is just going to be exacerbated. And speaking for myself and my husband, you know, we would be very happy to have a rental properties next door in both the lots next door. That would be just fine with us. And, you know, speaking frankly for us as well, if this were a development that they were trying to turn into, you know, truly affordable housing, we would also look at this differently, but that's not the case here. So, you know, we'd urge the commission to take the thoughts and the concerns that that we and our neighbors have, that the commissioners, other commissioners have also expressed, and deny the request for a special exception for parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. I'm going to mute you.
Michael, can I ask a question quickly before we move on? And could you unmute Lucy?
Yep, she's unmuted.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you virtually. Welcome to 430. But because you live in 430 Manor Place, I specifically want to ask this question. Because if memory serves me correct, and I think it does, 430 was essentially a burned out shell for years. That eventually got some tender loving care and was brought back to life. And that was something that we had all worked very hard to do. So my question to you is it essentially a single family home with a separate basement unit, or is it a single family home? Because I'm trying to compare apples to apples.
Sure. We have one single family home.
Okay.
In 430.
Yeah. Okay. That's helpful because that's what I thought, but that also gives me comparables about knowing how some things have been developed, how some things have been brought back. I can look at the real estate records and see what the comparables are.
And I don't know if this is
too, and it certainly didn't prevent it from selling.
No, and I would also point out that our lovely new neighbors next door, I believe it's the same developer actually, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but they have a 2-unit condo conversion next door. So, both units have sold and we love our new neighbors. And so presumably that's possible with these 2 lots as well.
Well, and this isn't for Lucy so much, but also something that we need to consider, and I'm talking to the other commissioners. Just for broader context, the 2 houses on Park Place right around the corner are both fenced in and getting renovated. I presume they're by right because we've seen nothing. I don't know if they're being renovated as single family homes or converted into 2 units, but we probably need to figure that out as well, because that would be 4 houses in a row, even though they bend around the corner, potentially. That would be increasing the stress on parking, none of which have rear access. And not necessarily the owner's fault who's before us tonight. That's just existing conditions.
Okay, let me try to get these other. Thank you again, Lucy. Oops, thank you. I'm going to go to Tim Letts. Tim, you should be unmuted and you can speak.
Great. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Tim Letts, my wife Diana and I live at 438 Manor, so down the block. And I just want to say thank you. Appreciate the comments so far, and certainly support the comments from our neighbors. Our block is a bit of an anomaly without the alley in back, and all of us relying on street parking. I think we all know that increased density is continuing to come to the neighborhood and certainly to the block. Lucy mentioned the conversion next door as well, and that's fine. But I think, as has been pointed out, that it makes it much harder to see any case for relief or a special exception for the parking rule here. If you look to the other end of the block on the northwest corner, there are multiple, I believe, four unit buildings on that side, and I don't know what their parking situation is behind, but I know that our neighbors who are residents of those buildings also rely on the street parking here. So there's quite a bit of density already, and it's going to continue with the projects that have been mentioned, and that is becoming more of a challenge. I also think Daniel points out a strong point too, which is we already have pretty narrow sidewalks here. Adding more trash cans to it doesn't make passage on the sidewalks any easier. I think that the neighborhood is pretty consistent in our opposition to relief here. And as far as the alternate goes, again, we have great rental neighbors on either side. I take the point that it can be hard to know what ends up happening with the parking density, but I'm not concerned. I'm more concerned with seeing 2-3 units properties go in those two locations than taking the risk with two unit conversions. Whether they end up being rentals or not, as was pointed out, 432 was just renovated into two unit condos, into a 2-unit condo that sold very quickly. So if the owners want to take that route and still maintain a sale, I'm sure they would be perfectly able to do that with the two properties in question here. I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Vic Edgerton.
Yeah, Edgerton. Yeah,
Edgerton.
can you hear me? I don't know why my.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, good. Yeah, my name is Vic Edgerton. I live here in 427, right across the street, with my wife Rachel and my 2 kids. We moved here in 2013, and we have started our family here. It's a fantastic street for many reasons. Mostly the people that live here, but it is also a calm street that is by and large safe for our kids. And it is by and large, again, a peaceful street, and and that's important to us. One of our great frustrations since we moved in is parking. The parking was difficult when we moved in 2013 for about 6 to 7 months out of the year. I think for those of us who have been around long enough to know, to be familiar with the cycle of street cleaning and non-street cleaning, you can remember how hard it is to find a parking place around here right now. I would just, if it's hard for you to imagine, please just think about coming home from a long day of work with 2 screaming kids in the car and an armload of stuff that needs to be carried back inside, and not being able to park on your own street becomes a very daunting and frustrating logistical problem that usually elicits a string of profanity that no child should be subject to. That, of course, is my problem and a different problem. But the point remains, parking is a problem, and it's just extraordinarily difficult for not only families that live here with young kids, and I assure you there are many families with young kids on this block, but it's also a problem for those on the other end of the age spectrum who really need to park in front of their house to get into their homes. And that's something that we try to pitch in and help with, right? As much as we can. We shovel walks, we help to carry groceries and all that sort of thing, but we're not always around, and so we can't always be relied on to provide that assistance. So I think the parking problem is something that really needs to be taken seriously. The other thing I'll add to is the the trash problem. The sidewalks here are narrow, and that's inconvenient at best, and sometimes dangerous when kids are forced to walk into the street. If you've ever tried to walk with 2 young kids just to get out for the night or for the day to get some fresh air, to provide some desperately needed relief, you'll know that sometimes they get excited, they jump out, and they will do whatever it takes to get around errant trash cans. So it's already a crowded situation. I don't know, my wife Rachel is here. I think she wants to say something.
Oh, no, I just wanted to add that just to give you a sense of the tightness of this small scale street. Our street is one of the few on which there is no room for tree boxes in the sidewalk because it's so narrow. And I remember Kent once calling these the dachshund of the neighborhood. These are the low squat houses. This is a small scale street, unlike some of the other streets in the neighborhood, which have more of a grand scale. And so I'm sure that speaks to why the sidewalks are narrow and things are smaller. and there's no back alley. It was just wasn't planned for that type of residential housing.
Hey, thank you both. I'm going to try to move us along. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit Joshua and then George, and then I'll come back to, I see 2 hands raised on the panel, but let me get Joshua and George first. Joshua?
Thank you, Michael. My name is Josh, and and I live at 429 Manor Place with my wife Lindsay and my daughter and soon-to-be son. And we've lived on this block since 2014. So, just sort of reiterating some of the points that that Vic made, Daniel, and our neighbors. We've seen a lot of change on this block in the last few years, and the parking density has gotten worse. I do want to also reiterate Vic's point about the street sweeping. We almost forget that there's a large portion of the year where there's half as much parking, for 6 months a year, which actually makes things even more difficult. So for us, this increased density creates quite a few issues for us, and as folks have I think very well said, I just don't see this as being the best interest of this calm and and fairly peaceful block.
Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you.
And George. George, you're unmuted. George Palmer. One more time, George Palmer.
Can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Okay, sorry. Just want to take the moment to echo what my neighbors have been saying. I'm a resident of 445 Park Road since 1998. And I've been before this commission before, once seeking parking relief, in the sense that I requested to put in a driveway, right, to remedy the problem that is increasing in our neighborhood. Don't mind development, but the city, as the way it's going in development, is building more than the infrastructure can support. Right? So I don't see, any good cause why we would support granting waivers to folks to provide the parking that is required in order to build beyond what is the standard. Okay. I just wanted to support that in saying that, no, I would not ask you not to support this exception. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Okay, I'm going to start with Michael because he's been on our, Michael Sortwell, sorry.
Yes, this is Catherine. Not sure how my husband got himself on the panel, but just wanted to echo all of our neighbors. Nothing too much new to add, but just also are very against this for all the reasons that have been stated.
Thank you. And then Mr. Wood, did you have a question?
I kind of more of a comment. So, I mean, obviously this is an uphill battle for the developer. I mean, half the damn street showed up to protest this. But I'm looking at the Google map, like the street view of it next door, and I'm seeing that at 3526 Park Place, the property that kind of abuts it from the side, it appears as though they have like a curb cut, which you're never going to get out of us, and a shed next door. And I'm wondering if you've ever looked into maybe getting a constructive easement or like splitting that. I mean, that would give you 2 parking spaces, and it looks like there's a little alley between that you could put trash cans there. Like, have you thought about any other solutions other than proposed today?
I have not thought about that solution specifically. You're talking about trying to purchase an easement from that property to park 1 car there?
Well, it looks as though they have 2 cars parked there and a shed. And if you could convince them to do tandem parking, you would be able to park 2 cars on that spot. And so if I'm assuming that the reason behind this is you're trying to make money off this property, you make more money if it has more units in it. Would you be able to defray the cost of that easement by doing the 3rd apartment if you had a parking spot literally right next door with a curb cut? And it's like, it seems like the best solution here would be to work with the neighborhood, because
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just proposing a possible solution to this. And Ken, you may
Well,
have another idea of your.
No, it's not another idea. It's more things to consider because Google Street View isn't always real time. That corner property is currently being converted into, I presume, 2 units of condo. And so they'll probably be wanting their parking for their units. But you could always ask. But it's currently under construction to be flipped and converted, as is the house to the south of it. And so that's when I was commenting earlier that while those are different owners and different projects, we kind of have 4 houses in a row, none of which have access to the rear. Well, the corner one does because it has a garage. And so its rear is completely exposed, which was a strange sentence structure. But anyway, but then you notice the walkway to the side too. And you wouldn't get this from Google Views. That walkway on the one hand is not maintained as well as it should, but I also think that it's public space because that concrete walkway does go across the rear of the properties on Park Place a fair spell. And I think that is supposed to be the public easement that gives access to the rear of the houses on Park Place. I'm not sure if people use it. Last time I checked, it was overgrown and poorly maintained. I don't know if people know they have a right to use it, but I think that might be a public easement, which would be difficult, I think, to encroach upon. Just things that would need to be sorted out. That's why I throw them out.
But like my point being is, what are the alternatives that you have considered here, and are there any in maybe that would be worth exploring, especially right now if they're redeveloping that property?
Thank you. I think actually that kind of makes the point where I was going to be, because we're an hour in, and I've got one more case that I would like us to hear this evening. I think it's fairly clear, I hope, Matt, that there is some opposition here. And that maybe rethinking, we've got, the good thing is we have some time. So we're not going to be able to vote on this until January. I'm happy to set up any future meetings if you guys, based on what you're hearing, if you want Commissioner Bass and I to help set up something with the neighbors, we're happy to do that too. But I think at this point, you've heard enough. And unless you have any particular questions, I would say, why don't you go back and take that in? But do you have any thoughts there?
I mean, just one follow-up question. So what I'm hearing is that the density is not an issue, it's the parking. The third unit would produce another family that may have a car there.
I'm sorry, but that's not. I'm sorry, but that's not a correct assumption. The zoning is 2 cars permitted on that lot for that size. So it has nothing to do with what we want. It has to do with what zoning requires and what you're asking us to do. So let's be clear on the ask and the reason. I just don't want it to be, I don't want any misstatements or misconceptions. We're dealing with that right now. So we want to be crystal clear. We're talking about not approving, potentially not approving a request for a special exception, which our neighbors have clearly demonstrated that is something they do not want. So please don't put a spin on it. It is what it is. And then you need to work from that point and not any other suppositions. Is that fine?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Dottie, Commissioner Wade, if I can follow up on that, what I would recommend and what I would like to see is if Matt, if you're able to have conversations with the neighbors and find solutions or address the concerns. I did hear the lion's share of the concerns being about parking, but there were also concerns about trash management. There were also concerns about other things as well. So again, echoing Commissioner Ray, if you need our help in setting up that conversation, we're happy to do it. If it's something you want to do directly, that's fine. But I think that everyone has been very gracious with their time and sharing their opinions, something that we don't get on very many cases. So I would take that to heart and talk with them on, talk with our neighbors on a more personal level and find out, is there any room or is there not room? And then we will act in our official capacity when that time comes, based on any new information, if there is any. But as Commissioner Ray says, we cannot vote on this officially until January of the next term. So I think since there is time, even though it has holidays in it, I would use that time to see if you can find any solutions.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay. We're going to move on. Those of you that want to stay, feel free to stay. If you
Thank
want to come off, I won't feel bad. And I am looking for.
To echo Judson a little bit, someone should build a parking garage across the street from Park Place over there. I think
they could make a bundle. They could make a bundle.
Don't get me started on my love of parking structures. I think I'm the odd man out on that one.
Miss,
I wasn't joking.
No, I'm not either. Like me when I said when Tubman redid their field, there should have been an underground parking garage there for the teachers because that's a big issue.
Good evening, Ms. Sheehan. Who from the architect is planning to present? Do you know?
Yes, Adam Crane.
Adam is going to. Okay, so Adam, I'm going to promote. Well, hold on. I think I might have to get. Okay, he fell off. Your other colleague fell off, so that's good. I just
my colleague Carrie Kadlachek should be on as well.
Okay. Have a check. Got it.
And then Brian Athey should be on.
Got it. All right. Now this is for 3315 11th Street, just to help put people in perspective. This is right next door to the El Chucho restaurant on 11th Street, which is represented by currently a vacant ANC seat. But we do have a new person coming in, and she asked me to record the meeting, so she does plan to watch this with great interest, I am sure. So take it away.
It also abuts my single member district.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
All right, am I good to go?
Yes, please.
Ready. Hi, good evening, commissioners. I'm Carrie Kadlachek. I'm the land use counsel for the developer of this property. Just to give you a quick overview in case you haven't had a chance to look at anything or don't know anything about the case. What's proposed here is a nine unit residential building. It's, as you can see, on 11th Street. We're requesting a special exception for one space of parking relief. As you can see here, the property doesn't have any alley access. I do want to note, and the developer Brian Athey will explain this a little bit more. The project is opting in to IZ, so there will be one affordable unit that is not required, but the developer is opting into that. So with that, I will let the developer Brian Athey give you a little bit more context about the project.
Thank you, Carrie. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't see myself for some reason, which is just fine. But thank you all for your time this evening. Just by way of background, as Carrie mentioned, we bought this property some time ago. Our plan is to develop a 9-unit residential apartment building here. We have over the years developed both for sale condominium and apartment projects. We currently have a number of affordable housing projects as well as condominium projects. Here, although it's not directly relevant to our plan. Our plan is to most likely do affordable housing here. But with respect to the parking issue, I do know that, you know, I listened to the entire last case, and while this is a different block, I understand the sensitivity to the parking issue. So several months ago, it was my understanding that, you know, if you rented a space within 600 feet of the property in a non-R zone, that you could meet your requirements. So we, in fact, rented a space at 3325 11th Street Northwest to meet our parking requirement, but then we're subsequently told by the zoning administrator that because that building under the the prior zoning regs required, I think, 4 parking spaces, that we couldn't use it to meet our parking requirement. But we have executed a lease of which we're paying for the next 2 years, and I think there's an option for another year to meet our parking requirement. But apparently that's not sufficient. So but anyways, we have that space, and somebody from our building could certainly use it because we're paying for it. And so, you know, and then while I was listening to the conversation, I looked on Property Quest and noted that of the 18 properties on the block, 13 of the 18 have alley access, as far as I can tell. Yeah. So this is a different situation than the situation on Manor. But again, I understand the sensitivity to parking. I'm cognizant, you know, of it. I have reached out to Norm Veenstra, who owns the building at El Chucho. Norm and I have known each other for years. Wyatt Barron in my office has reached out to Miss Gilliam, you know, and to her daughter, who's the adjacent property owner. You know, in fact, we asked, you know, if we could lease a space from her, but it doesn't appear that she's interested in that. And I don't think that's likely based on our communication with her, which has been, you know, quite limited. And she's just really not interested in communicating, to my knowledge, so far. But anyways, that is my brief sort of overview, to the extent it's helpful, and I'll let the rest of the team take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. My name is Adam Crane. I'm the architect for the project. So I guess I'll give you guys an overview, and then you know, Carrie can dive into any other details we need for the exception or the relief that we're seeking. We're doing the proposed property is going to be raised. I do have a survey showing the existing property here. So this existing building is going to be torn down and a new one built in its place. One thing from here, you can see the survey, we do have kind of a trash easement or a walking easement in the back, which gives us pedestrian alley access. Obviously, cars aren't coming in through there. But I believe trash is collected in the rear. So that's what that easement provides us. Site plan here kind of shows what we're doing. We're proposing a bit of a front addition and a bay window, which will match many of the properties on the street with the bays. Footprint is going up to 75%, which is what the IZ opt-in allows. You see there's some neighboring chimneys here, which is requiring us to maintain a clearance of 10 feet on the upper levels. We've got a terrace on the first floor, and then the rear yard with access to that trash easement. Kind of an overview of the floor plans, all of them. The cellar unit, we've got 2 units down here in the cellar unit. We've got a bike storage area here, which can be accessed from either the rear or the front through these stairs. So
sorry,
residents
can you point out where is the bike area again?
Right here.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So that's on the cellar level in the hallway. So that can be accessed from the rear or from the front via those stairs, and that's accessible for all residents. Again, on the cellar level, we have 2 units, front and back. So this is kind of a building that's set up split between the front and back. On the first floor, we've got the next 2 units, Unit 3 and Unit 4. I believe Unit 4 is our IZ unit. Again, this is not required to have an IZ set up. This is an opt-in by the owner. So that'll be our dedicated IZ unit. Going up to the next level, second floor, we then have Unit 5 and Unit 6. Then the entrances to the upper two units are kind of here, meaning, I'm sorry, to unit 7. We've got stairs here that come into unit, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the next level. So this entrance to unit 8 and 9 will be here on the 2nd floor, on the 3rd floor. Kind of a bit of a foyer up here. And those have internal stairs that take you up to the 4th and 5th floor for units 8 and 9. Those are bi-level units. Unit 7 actually spans all of the 3rd floor. It's a bit circuitous because we're kind of working around those cutouts with respect to the chimneys. So you've got a living space up here and sleeping area in the back. We've got a little more detailed floor plans on the following pages. You can see we've got bedroom, bathroom, living. A lot of these are kind of studio 1-bedroom setups, smaller units, I would say. Unit 3 and 4 similar. Again, unit 4, IZ unit. Unit 5 and 6 here on the 2nd floor. Unit 7 spanning the majority of the 3rd floor with entrances to the upper units on this level. And the lower portion of the unit 8 and 9 occur on the 4th floor. You can see the living areas with the powder room. And then in the penthouse or 5th floor, these are the bedroom areas. So some elevations. You can see this is kind of that chimney cutout in the middle, which kind of in a nice way brings a lot of light into the interior of these units. This is kind of the bay window we have visible here that we're proposing at the front. Side elevations where you can see the kind of the outline of the existing building down here. So if anyone has any questions, more than willing to go over anything.
Do me a favor, leave up the slide that shows the cutouts on the side, because I know I'm going to have some questions on that.
This one?
Yeah, leave it on that.
Sure.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Thank you. So, and I saw in the plans that the reason for this cutout is the chimneys. But my concern with this is that once people buy or move into these units, that they're going to expect that they're going to have those for the rest of their lives that they're living there. But every property to the north of here can build exactly to the same height that you're showing, and that will then make these into, I don't even know what you would call that, some kind of interior.
We'd have to call it a light well then.
A light well, but it's a large. I mean, I've seen light wells that are small. These are big light wells.
Views not guaranteed.
Yeah, I'm really concerned that we're going to create a situation that's going to pit 2 different neighbors against each other because of a design that you made. And
we can. Can I speak to that?
Yeah, please.
We can handle that through disclosure anyways. I mean, if we were to sell them, I mean, again, if they're rentals, then that's a non-issue, and that's our plan currently.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, our intention at this point, and we can't, we can't predict the future. I mean, I guess it's possible that we could go the for sale route, but our plan, currently is to do rentals. But even if we did sell, we would certainly, want to disclose that, because the last thing you want to do is, it sort of reminds me of a like an at-risk window situation, right? Because if you don't, you've got to disclose those things. I'm a lawyer by background, and so I'm kind of a nervous Nelly anyway. So I believe in over disclosure rather than under disclosure. But I think that's a fair point.
And in theory, you could just make them a flat wall or even an at-risk flat window and build the chimney up. Could you? Why not just build the chimney all the way to the top?
The neighbor does not want anyone on her roof. She's an older woman who.
Yeah, I know the house.
Yeah, she just really stated that she doesn't want us on our roof, and we've tried a bunch of different ways, and at this point, eventually you get to a point where you just want to respect people's wishes and work around it,
Okay.
So we've given it the all-American try, though, I can tell you.
Okay. No, I understand. I know that household. I know that house.
Thanks.
In the rear, where you mentioned that's where the trash would go, but you also have in one of them where the mechanicals are back there. What would be the possibility of moving the mechanicals all to the roof instead of using the backspace?
We could move some of them. Issue is, I guess we could kind of place them. It's you can't access mechanicals for one unit going through another.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So
yes.
It's
yes.
We could maybe put like unit 8 and 9s on their decks. Unit 7 could probably be on the terrace. So maybe we can get rid of like 3 of them.
Yeah, because I mean, if we remain at 9 units like this, that's that again, like we mentioned in the previous case, that's a lot of trash. You're probably going to have multiple small bins in order to keep them there, and the hauler is going to have to take them in and out. So that's just it's going to eat up a lot of room.
Yeah, another option we could look at, Brian, is doing some kind of wall hung condenser units that they're hung kind of on the back facade or something somewhere on this terrace that can free up a little bit of ground room.
Yeah, we're doing that on a different project now, so that's a good idea.
I see. Did I have another question? I mean, and and I'll just say it this way. This reminds me somewhat of the project that was originally going to go around the Red Rocks Pizzeria. I don't know how familiar any of you might have been with that. I see
Is Ryan Risley a part of that? A guy named Ryan Risley. It sounds familiar.
I think maybe that was about 2 years ago, and it was a big to do here, and ultimately they didn't do it. They went with much smaller, with much larger, fewer apartments that were much larger. And I imagine they did that for financial reasons. But you're wedded to 9. Is that? Want to try larger?
So I can explain that if you want.
Please.
It doesn't really apply to this project. If you're adding 10 units or more, you're required to do IZ. It's mandatory, not voluntary. So you'll see a lot of projects around town where that's their ceiling. On this, these units are already pretty small. I think we'd be overexerting ourselves and approaching the minimum unit size by zoning if we tried to fit any more than 9. So
why not trying to get more? I'm actually asking if you wanted to do less that were larger.
That's Brian's call.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know what. It's not going to. You mean in terms of the parking load or the trash? Because I don't think it really, because it's really about bedroom. The smaller the unit is, in my view, the less likely there is to be parking. And in fact, if we do rentals and if we do affordable rentals, then the likelihood of a parking impact is, in my view, especially with the latter, is
less. Very,
very, very much less.
And then talk to me about what you mean when you say affordable rentals. What are we, the IZ unit we know then would be 60% of AMI. What are the rest?
Voucher, HCVP.
Okay. So your intent is to, sorry, just to make sure that's clear, because not everyone's going to know what you're just saying. The intent is to make sure that they're priced such that if I am a voucher holder in the District of Columbia, that it would not overextend. I would be able to use my voucher in order to get that apartment.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
That's our intention now. I mean, our sort of company objective is to create the highest quality voucher program tenant product that there is. I mean, if you Google one of our small voucher programs at 1230 Carrollsburg Place Southwest, it gives you an idea of the product. We cut our teeth building condominium products, so we don't know how to build product that's not nice. So that's our objective, and I know the city needs more affordable housing. Many don't want it in their backyard, even though they'll say publicly they do want it, but we're advocates for it. So. And
there is one 2-bedroom unit in the plan. Is that the case? I thought that it's the one that's the whole floor, right?
Yeah.
7. No.
We show one bedroom in unit 7. Unit 8 and 9. This is kind of a small living area up front. This could be a bedroom, but we're showing it open for now. So I think potentially the upper 2 units could be 2 bedrooms.
We've gone back and forth. That's why I hesitated a little bit.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right. Looking back to my panel, Commissioner Bass or Commissioner Lovewade, any questions?
I see the last question about a trash chute. I'll just address that now. These small buildings, we don't tend to do trash. I've actually never done a trash chute, and we've developed dozens of these. And while I'm not opposed to them in general, I think that it's logistically would be pretty challenging. But the idea is that, they're small units and people would walk them out to the back, and we'd have multiple bins as mentioned before. Multiple small bins rather, and then multiple collection days.
So my question is, are you building to right? Or are you asking for variances? Because it's a mighty big building on a very small lot.
The only relief that we're seeking, ma'am, is parking relief. So to answer your specific question, yes, the relief that we're seeking is this would typically zoning would require one parking space, and we're asking for no parking. We do have, like I said, we have leased that other space, but we would not have on-site parking because this is one of the 5 properties in this out of 18 that don't have parking on this square.
Let me ask, and not to put them on the spot, Commissioner Bass, do you have any experience with the renting of spaces in order to fulfill? I know it no longer fulfills the requirement, or this one isn't making it, but I mean, this does seem like something of a mitigation.
No, I mean, it sounds like a mitigation to me, but I don't have any experience, and I don't have any even anecdotal evidence that it works or doesn't work. I would say, though, one of my questions, which I think gets to this a little bit, is these look like smaller units. You've alluded to them being smaller units. I'm curious, what's the square footage that we're talking about?
Adam, do you have the square footage tear sheet that you can pull up? I don't have. I just can't.
And the reason I ask that, if these are more 1-bedroom or efficiencies, the odds are that they're going to be available to younger people and smaller families. And considering the location, I think that there's a higher probability that the residents will not have a car. So I think that's something that I'm trying to think about as well. As I think you get just like you drive the speed on the road the way it's built, I think you kind of get the residents and shall we say transportation habits of the size units that you're building. Like I think there are relationships there. So I'm kind of nattering at this point, but that's why I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around how big are these units. And then along with that, we've talked about the IZ unit, but did I understand correctly that all of the units are, I won't say they're affordable, but they'd be rentable in the range where anyone with a housing choice voucher would be able to use that voucher for the unit? Because I know sometimes things come online and there's nothing that would prevent someone with a voucher moving there other than the fact that the rental price is higher than the voucher would cover, which makes it a barrier.
In Columbia Heights, as you you may know, the HCVP rents are high, and so it actually isn't one of the neighborhoods where the market rents tend to be significantly higher than the voucher rents. So it would make typically it makes them palatable. It makes it work the math work for both sides. And then speaking to your prior point about the size of the units, that's my experience too in selling lots of condo projects. When you tend to need and sell parking when you have large units. So when the price point goes up and you have larger units, people are more apt to need and want to buy parking. And the smaller and the smaller the size and the lower the price point, it's just less likely that people, want, need, and then buy parking. That's been my experience, candidly, over the years.
Well, and to build on that, I would also, if your intent is for these to be rentals, and there's smaller size units, again, I think there's a higher probability that the residents will not be bringing a car. If these were slightly larger and they were condos, it's been my experience that when you get a condo that's big enough with 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, homeowners, families grow. And as we heard when discussing the last case, even younger neighbors who are completely behind biking and modes of transportation other than cars. Once you have a newborn, everything changes. And so if these units are on the small size, where they're likely not going to be housing growing families, just something for us to consider.
I wasn't sure if there was a question in there, Commissioner.
No, it just kind of, look, it's been a long day. I'm starting to round.
Yeah, I know. This is the third of these for you. Isn't it?
Well, also something for us to consider is the development going up directly across the street, which is going to have an impact on demand for parking as well. So all of these parking requests just compound an already horrible situation we had.
No, go ahead.
I'm clear on my position on parking. I'm very clear on it, and I'm pretty set in it.
No, and I that's where I was going. So you have the space; it is already rented. Obviously, then you would not have a problem with us asking that part of the order include that you would keep that lease, and that space would be made available to one of these residents.
I'd have no problem with that at all.
Okay. So
in fact, it would make me feel better about the fact that I'm paying every month right now and getting no use. So.
Okay. And we will still have to vote to give you the relief, because that's how the zoning administrator will look at it. But we can make the order require that you would keep that space. So that, I think that would be something, hopefully, to make Commissioner Wade feel better. And then I do have a question, and I know you're going to hate this, but on the IZ unit, is there any way financially that it would work as one of the 1 bedrooms as opposed to one of the efficiencies?
Well, it's about the size of it.
Well, yeah, but hold on, I'm going to stop you there. There's a difference in the financials of that voucher. That at an efficiency level, it's charged at a certain, there's a certain number difference than if you have the one bedroom. So that's why I'm asking the question.
So right now, can you remind me? I can't.
It's 387. I can't quite see it versus the 1 bedroom, which is 5.
Adam, can you zoom in? I'm like losing my nearsightedness here.
There you go.
I have zoomed in. Can you see that?
Okay.
So for the ISA unit, we got 387. For the upper units, unit 7, 8, 9, they're at 537, 557, 630. So, you're 200 plus square foot additional for those upper units.
Oh, the upper units. Yeah. I mean, we picked this because it meets the size requirement. And, it keeps our our optionality in case we, ultimately didn't rent. I mean,
the sitting zoning commissioner, I would have to think, is going to ask that same question at the BZA.
Yeah, I haven't really. Yeah, I understand.
That's one of the things that they're going to look at is where is that unit located in the building, and then why you chose the one that you chose. And I mean, I'm not going to put it on in their head, but
no, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it in a while, to be honest.
But Michael, I'll take you on that bet because I know I'm not going to lose.
And for folks that are not as familiar, the city has a determined amount that you are allowed to charge for an efficiency versus a 1 bedroom, and so that it changes the numbers, and it may not work for what you're hoping to do, but it's something maybe you should think about.
I'll think more about it.
Okay.
One of my questions is, that's a lot of people in a single row house. That's a lot of people. I live in one of the single row houses. It's rather large. 9 people in this house would drive me like insane. So what sound mitigation things are you doing for that house? I mean, it can't be your regular your regular sheetrock wall.
Did you say sound? No, it's
Sound
not. Adam,
mitigation.
if you want to speak to that, but sound is an issue that we work very hard on. I mean, what you'll find is folks who have, sold condominiums in the past, like we have for years, work very hard to make sure that the sound transmission is minimal as possible. So, for example, in between the floors, we do a Adam, I'm blanking on the name of, but it's like it's a poured. We do poured floors that are essentially like a concrete layer along the floor to provide more buffering between the units. There's a number of different steps that we do to reduce sound, because when you build these buildings and you stack units, if you don't do it the right way, the residents are unhappy. And so we've
well,
I would also
I'd like
add
for you
that
to.
the code itself protects you on that. So in between floor and ceilings, and also vertically with the walls, the code has requirements. Minimum STC, sound transmission class, are required of those walls and floors and ceilings between units. So I think it's STC of 50 is the minimum. So that's we have to specifically call that out in the plans.
Right. So you would just do minimum. You wouldn't do anything extra, just considering the number of people. I know in your normal condos, you don't have 9 apartments in a teeny apartments like that. I'm just really, I'm concerned about the design and the impact, not only on the abutting walls. I just see that whole block becoming one big 5-story apartment building side of the street. It's already happened further up, and a couple of houses in between. I'm sure people are eyeing for development. But I just want to make sure that when you're putting these sardine apartment type buildings up, and that's what it looks like to me, is sardines, jamming as many people as you can in that small amount of space, that at least if they are renters, that they'd be given special consideration that you would give to owners.
Oh, sure. We're going to build the building the same, whether they're rentals or condominiums, in terms of the innards of the building, and meeting the sound transmission requirements are really important to us. Obviously, I mean, we're required to, but B, there are minimal ways to meet it, and then ways like doing poured floors that are more expensive, but that we do because they're better than some other alternatives. So
this is the kind of information I need when we're making our decisions, even though you talk about what you're required to do under code. If there's anything to make your this presentation more palatable, it would help. I mean,
we're happy.
You just
I'm sorry.
Put as much lipstick on this pig as you can.
Well, we'll give you more information about our sound transmission minimization efforts, and then so that you can see, and perhaps we'll include some photos of some existing product that's like this, that are rentals, that may help.
Do me a favor.
I'd like to see that.
Take the presentation down so I can just see everybody again, if you don't mind. Thank you. So for our new commissioner-elects, did you guys have any particular questions or thoughts? No?
It's been really helpful.
Okay. So, it sounded like this is going in a better direction than the last one did. So I'll still leave it open, as we said, if you could get us, any additional information on how those units in the back will be handled. Maybe get us did you put the lease arrangement in the record? Is that for the parking space?
I'm happy to provide it. That's
fine, why
don't
you put that in? If there was specific language, how would you want it worded in an order if we were able to get it there? So you might want to share with me, your lawyer might want to share with me how that wording could look.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think that, like Brian said, that condition is acceptable. The only thing that I would ask for is that it not be tied to that specific property, insofar as if that person, the renter of the space, or the rentee rather, if he says, I don't want to rent it to you anymore, we'd like to have the option to find another space.
Understand. Yeah. So that, yeah, just give me something that we could look at. We may,
That was my, excuse me, yes, that was my concern, that that lease would be terminated at the end of 2 years, and we were left with the same situation we were prior to the lease, which is no extra parking.
Well, if in this case, it's the requirement is to find replacement parking, as long as it doesn't have to be, in a non-R zone, then we wouldn't have any problem finding it. It's just when it has to be in a non-R zone, it becomes more challenging because within 600 feet, there just aren't as many non-R zone properties. That was the only real challenge here.
and in this case, it wouldn't, I mean, for our purposes, we wouldn't care.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter because
we've already waived it. All right. So
Right.
yeah.
So maybe the way we propose it, and we'll give you some sample language, but I think the direction we're going is that it would be renting a space, an off-street space from another property, for the life of the building or something like that.
And then just include for what your first example.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Okay. Am I forgetting anything, folks?
I have a question about it. So would you be willing to, I'm just wondering, who would have the right of first refusal for the parking space?
The right of first, well, I mean, I think the question is you either rent it to I guess you rent it to whoever, whoever wants it, who wants to pay for it. I mean, I don't know how you'd probably just offer it up to everyone and then say, and do first come, first serve. I mean, I think in cases like where I've had one parking spot for a condominium building, you just email everyone and say whoever's first gets it, But I don't know of a more creative way. I actually hadn't thought of that.
My thought process behind that was for the VZ unit, it may serve as a way of opening up the neighborhood to someone who would otherwise be restricted in terms of being able to live here and work somewhere else. So
sure.
That's an idea.
Yeah. All right. Unless there is anything else, yeah, you'll get us that information, and we'll schedule you guys for that first meeting in January. Your hearing isn't until March, I believe.
That's right.
Okay. March 3rd. That's right.
Yeah, we've got plenty of time there too.
Commissioner Ray, do you want us to send that information to you directly, or what's the best distribution?
Yes, and I'll make sure that everybody gets it, including the commissioner who will be taking over that particular block. And she said she would watch this case, so she'll be familiar with it when she gets there in January.
Okay, very good.
Great.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Have a good
nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.